Hi, I'm Sydney Robertson,
And I'm Amy Kiernan.
and Reinventing the Algorithm is our invitation to you to reimagine work and life with intention, purpose, and a sense of freedom.
Together, we're going to explore what it means to show up as our true selves. And so, this is for anyone that's ready to create a more meaningful, fulfilling journey on your own terms. Hi, Sid.
Hi, Ames.
Oh, it's the last episode of the season for us. It's very poignant, it's very profound, and yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting for us to use this episode as a way to reflect, what we've learned in the past year for, while we're doing this podcast. And we called it like reinventing the algorithm because we wanted to redefine what success, means for us now that we're in our 40s, that we've, navigated changes in our career and what ambition means. So it's really exciting to spend this episode really reflecting back on the lessons that we've learned about entrepreneurship and running your own business, but also corporate careers and, what does success look like now for us? So it's quite exciting to be here talking about all of that.
Oh my gosh, so exciting. Now we've got been through quite a journey. Even we're in the same tops today. It was just meant to be.
I know.
And
It,
look,
it
look at
is.
us.
I mean, the universe just puts us together to make sense of things. I think that's
I
just what
know.
happens. So, first question, we talked about what success used to look like for us. We've both been in the corporate world for quite some time. We've both been sales professionals for, more than 2 decades each, which is wild. I feel like I remember this stat where when we did one of our first episodes, we talked about us having nearly a combined 50 years experience. We're aging ourselves.
Yeah.
We can cut that out.
No,
But it is so
it's
interesting. It is
true.
what it
It's
is.
true. It
Yeah,
is what
it
it
is
is.
true. So
Yeah.
what do you think has changed most for you, like, when you think about success now compared to when we started this podcast?
Well, I think for me, and it's been very cathartic because as we've been releasing our podcasts, I had a moment, I think it was 2 podcasts ago, because we obviously delayed some of our recordings for launch just due to timing and just spreading things out. And it was interesting because the past year has been such a shift for me, after leaving my previous corporate gig last June and taking the year. I mean, the first, I'd say 3 months, I was just trying to just decompress. Like I talked a lot about the nervous system and all the things that involve my actual mental health and physical health. So I'd say, the first 3 months was just about coming back into my body again. And, the shift that happened from that time on was just amazing. Working with you has been phenomenal. We've done several events together. We launched this podcast together. And because of your amazing coaching, I honestly, like, you've really helped push me into inner reflection a lot more. And it was funny, I've recently started another corporate gig for now, and I feel like a duck out of water, a fish out of water, whatever the term is, because I've forgotten about muscle of getting into systems and everything else. 'Cause I've been at Twitter for 10 years too. I just got so comfortable with everything. So just getting into systems and dynamics of teams and everything else, and getting caught up in my ego a little bit about my role in this entity and all the things. And then I listened to our episode that we were going to publish for redefining success. And then it reminded me of the important things that we talked about, right? That yes, there are importance around, performing in a corporate entity, whether it's driving numbers or having success and outcomes out of a project, but also just remembering how important, like, how does it read back to me, right? And I'm not defined by what other people think of me or defined for me. I can be that person that can work in a corporate role, but also remember what true values are important to me. So that, I think, has been a biggest aha, because I've now put myself back into that situation now, and just the duality of it, but understanding what success is truly comes back to myself. Whereas I really had lost, I think, with my last corporate job at Twitter, like by the end of it, I really had lost what that really was, because I was just not really in my body.
And it was such a, I mean, stressful time, right? With all the change and everything that, we went through as a result of the organization shifting around and, just all the moving parts. It was something that I don't think you and I will ever like, how can you ever forget something like that? It's funny, I was thinking about it too. I was talking to somebody who I didn't know when I worked at Twitter. and I was explaining kind of like what my last role was there. And, for a long time, there was a lot of regret, maybe, or just, this kind of sense of like, did I do myself proud? Did I work hard enough? Did I contribute as much as I possibly could? Because, that's really important to me. And it was honestly one of the big reasons I left, is because I felt like I couldn't have any more impact just in the way that it was kind of structured, and just, after me being there like 10 and a half years, it just felt like a really good time to leave. But when I think back, it is always those times that are like the hardest. It's such a cliche, and but it's a cliche for a reason. It's like the hardest times are the ones where that you're forged, right? Like where a lot of your strength is forged. And, in even just reflecting back on like what I did in my last role and the role before that, it reminds you of all the things that you have achieved and what that means, I think. Because for me, one of the things that I learned about success was this like detachment from my achievements to my identity, and just like my identity being separate. And then like everything that I've achieved, and, all the accomplishments of like my career, the whole span of my career, a lot of the time that was very wrapped up together for me. And a lot of the time, I think my identity was somewhat dependent, perhaps even on some of those accomplishments. And I feel like for me, this past year has allowed me to kind of detach or separate them somehow. And I still like achievement. Like that was an interesting learning too, was like, just because I left, that situation and everything. And it's funny, you think like, "Oh, I'm not gonna value achievement anymore because, I'm not in that like fast-paced environment at the moment." But actually what was really interesting, sidebar, was like, "Oh, I'm actually really still into achievement." It was just, I think the work for me was to separate it, from my identity and from what matters most to me, kind of a thing. But yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes, I was gonna ask you the same question back, like what your version of success is. I mean, that really is very interesting, and I like that where you were so embedded in your identity with work that you didn't even know that achievement was the core root of who you are and what drives you as Amy,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
it
and I
is,
was willing. Exactly, and, so important for me to feel like I'm getting stuff done, I'm having impact, and it makes sense because when I think back, like, that was how I used to view, myself, and how I felt motivated in work. But I think, in being able to take this space and this time, and you and I have talked a lot about how privileged we are to have been able to take some time, like this gap between, our old corporate role and whatever is next for us. Like it's been such an incredible experience to be able to take that time and explore entrepreneurship and explore events and this podcast, like all these kind of projects that we've been working on. And one of the things that has sat with me that I have been really grateful for is how important learning is for me, and how interesting it is and how hard it can be when you're completely new at something. Because we talked about the scaffolding of a job before, right? Like, so when you're in a role, and like for you and I, we were at Twitter for like a decade, right? Each. And so you get very comfortable in knowing stuff, right? Like you talk about systems in this new job that you're in. And it's like you don't have to go through that when you're at a company for 10 years. You just know. You know where everything is. You know the systems. You know where how to get into Salesforce. You know how to get into this system, that system, whatever it is. And you don't have to deal with the discomfort of learning how to navigate the new systems. And so, what has been really interesting for me is everything has been new for me in this past year, particularly exploring entrepreneurship and building out my coaching practice more as a kind of a business. I've been new at so many things this past year, and terrible at so many things this past year, and I'm like, "Oh my God." And I think I had this expectation of myself where I was like, I'm expecting myself to be good at it, because the previous 10, 11 years, I didn't have to. I mean, yeah, like I changed roles and things in the company, but generally I was in a situation where the company itself didn't change. And so, now in this past year, having tried so many new things and so many new projects, like more speaking engagements and things like that, I think it's been uncomfortable, but I think it's been so important to continue living in that discomfort and learning how to tolerate it better as well.
right? Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, they always say like entrepreneurship is not just like press the button and go and everything works well. Like you have to go through. It's part of your initiation. I feel like to go through the highs and the lows. Like we even had that with some of our events, right? Like we had some amazing highs from our events we ran this year, and also some big learnings, right? Like how we don't want to do things going forward, how we learn from those. And that's just part of it. If it was just sunshine and roses the entire time, like what have we really learned? I feel, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just this concept of like discomfort not necessarily being a bad thing has been so interesting, and just like, I talked a little bit about this on my other podcast, but how, getting really comfortable with discomfort and with, putting yourself into situations where you don't know things and you're not the expert and you have no idea how it's going to turn out, but you trust in your ability to figure it out. Like, I think that has been something that I've practiced over and over and over this year. And it has meant that this past year has been really challenging. It's been uncomfortable. It's been humbling. Oh my God. It's been so humbling for my ego. I mean, I remember I was designing, I can't remember, was it like something to do with, I don't know, something on social media, and also, we worked in social media for 10 years. You think that this would be a comfort zone, but definitely not like creating your own stuff. But it was either that or it was creating some sort of a learning for others. And I remember giving myself this really hard time. I was like, oh my God, I can't seem to figure this out. And I was getting stuck and I was like hitting this resistance and I was feeling really crappy about it. And then I had this like breakthrough moment where I was like, wait a minute. I I need to give permission to myself to be new at this. Like, I actually have to recognize that I am new at this and it is what it is. Like, it is. I can't get around this. Yes, it feels more comfortable walking well-trodden paths, but I am going to be new at millions of things in the rest of my life. And the whole point of it is to walk towards that and to tolerate the discomfort of being new at something, because whatever is on the other side of that discomfort is learning, it's achievement, right? Like, it's whatever's important to me. It could be a number of amazing things. And so that has been a really great learning for me. This sense of like permission where I'm like, hang on a minute. I'm not going to be great at everything that I try. I'm not going to be perfect at everything I try. That's classic perfectionism for me, and very on brand. But like, I have permission. I can give myself permission to be new and bad at stuff. And that is very, very liberating.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I mean, that was a big thing. I remember when it was early days of this exploration in entrepreneurship, and it was like a day where I can't remember what I was doing, and I was like, had this big idea, and it totally flopped, and then I was second guessing myself, and then you were talking about the entrepreneurial wobble, and I was like, oh my god, it's like it's like when you can actually identify what is actually bothering you, it's better. It's when you don't know what that feeling is, and you can't actually like make it into a word, it's hard sometimes, right?
Yes.
But as soon
Yes.
as you gave it a title for me, I was okay to embrace it. It was funny. It was just like, "Okay, that's what I'm having. I'm having a wobble, and I'm gonna be okay." But that's exactly it, and since that time, I remember I've had those similar feelings, and I've doubted myself. I just remembered, this is part of the whole experience, and you just
Mm,
embrace the discomfort, and it's gonna be
mm,
okay.
mm.
So okay. Hi, boo-boos. Hi.
Even
Wanna say hi to
Poppy, like,
you wanna say hi to Amy? Come here.
wasn't
Yeah.
she? I'm trying to
Orgy.
remember
It's a
when.
bee.
Hello, baby.
Yes.
Hi.
No, she's a tutti patootie. You got Amy.
Like, imagine Poppy wasn't even like born last year.
I know. It's so crazy.
God.
Oh.
I we can keep this in. We should. Oh my. So cute. No worries. All good.
Back in.
Okay. Well, one of the things I think, and I think both of us experienced this, was this sense of getting more visible with our personal brands and with putting ourselves out there and sharing our kind of soft underbellies and like who we are and what is frightening or what is painful, or vulnerable about the experiences that we've had. I mean, I think we've shared a little bit about that kind of thing in the course of this podcast. I mean, this podcast, itself is us sharing, our stories with the world and with, people that we've worked with before, people who we may work with again in the or work with in the future. And that has been equally, I think, a point of resistance for me and a source of big learning. This sense of getting visible, this sense of showing up authentically, this sense of like figuring out, who I am and what I want to share and what I want to say, and what has come from that has been really interesting. The people that we've met, the stories that they have, It has been so
Wow. Yeah.
gorgeous and lovely, and letting people kind of see who we are, because I certainly didn't do that before this podcast, or even like in my last role, at Twitter. Like, when I think about it, my God, like, were we just behind the times, in not developing a personal brand for us? But I think when you get caught up in the corporate machine and you're working really, really hard, and you're also really wanting to be respectful of the company, and like knowing that you're representing it, you have this sense of, I don't want to say fear, but like certainly um restraint. Yeah, for
Restraint?
sure.
Maybe
And just like
restraint?
maybe,
Yeah.
you're very conscious of it. You're conscious of like how, and what you share online. And I think one of the and another liberating thing has been figuring out this personal brand thing. Not to say that I'm like perfect at it. I'm still feeling really not at all.
We're always a work in progress,
I
Ames,
know, even
trust
my
me,
language
and
is like,
everyone
Amy, is the
is.
point to be perfect? Like, even my language is very revealing. But like getting the courage to talk about things and letting people see me talk about them, like that's a big change for me, and go and doing like speaking engagements. Like, we did a couple of events in London, this past year, and speaking about motherhood and returning to work after maternity leave. Like, I spoke about that, what that was like. Even just all the identity questions that we've had to tackle, both internally as well as like talking about them on this podcast with our guests and with each other. All of that has been, just kind of slowly and gently revealing the soft underbelly, of like who we are, and yeah, like, and how we show up in the world, and how we want to show up in the world too.
No, I totally hear you. That's been a huge thing for me too. I mean, prior to being on my entrepreneurial journey, I looked at my posts on LinkedIn and they were mostly just forwards. Like, it was not like I was actually adding a voice to it. It was very much me and mostly sharing a product announcement of the company or someone else's that I believed in, but I wasn't really adding my own thoughts around it. And very much, yeah, I did not have my own voice at all. And I really, actually with our friend Amy Dubs, she really got me out of my shell a little bit more.
She's definitely a shell
And
breaker. Like, if you're
ale- she's definitely a shell breaker. And so I think it's, yes. So I think it was definitely, I, as like you, had to get comfortable with sharing my thoughts and feelings and not being attached to the outcomes that people either didn't like it or had, averse things to say or whatever else it is. And that's a hard thing too, right? Worrying about, because it's me being vulnerable, right? So whether it's our
what if
podcast
everyone thinks
or
we're shit,
whether it's a post on LinkedIn or a post on, yeah, exactly. So it's been interesting, and that's where, one of our events obviously in London was around that, right? Like getting visible and having your personal brand. And it's interesting because now I am in a corporate role again while doing this as well. It's just reminding me of, where you can have that duality, right? Where, like you said, like you are worried about, obviously you're representing a company potentially, right? As in your role, but you're also yourself, and you shouldn't feel that you are restrained from being able to express your feelings and express yourself. So we actually have an event coming up in September, and another Empower Her event actually. And it's interesting. It's with a lot of corporate leaders, right? Who are that, right? They are representing a company, but they're also should feel comfortable to represent themselves and be visible. So it'd be an interesting take. We'll have a regroup after our that event, because I feel like our event in London was more for entrepreneurs and this is more for corporate ladies. So there's an anchor truth for both. The theme is the same, but I think sometimes the challenges we face when you are part of a corporate company as well, it's just a bit more, deliberate, I guess you could say. Whereas I felt like when I was a true entrepreneur, I was able to say, I mean, I'm only responsible for myself, right? So if I wanna test the waters a little bit, I can be more, you know, open about sharing certain things or the way I word things. But, it's not that you can't be yourself, it's just a bit more, just refined, I guess, if it makes sense. And again, I'm still learning what that means, right? It's been a very short period of time for me, just, getting back into the corporate world. So, I'm very curious to see what comes out of our Empower Her event in September because, yeah, I mean, you can do both. It's
I
just a
think
matter
so
of
too.
figuring it out.
And actually, as you were even sharing about the event and the hunger that, exists in the corporate space to be authentic and to share your intention. thoughts about things. And this event that you're doing, is proof of that, I suppose. What it makes me think of is never before has there been such a value placed on authentic human voices because AI is everywhere, right? And
Mm,
I'm obsessed with it every single
I use it
day.
every
I use
day.
a multitude, like,
As do
oh
you.
my
We
God,
use
the
it all
amount
the
of
time.
tools that I have
Yeah.
learned about and just the unbelievable talk about entrepreneurship, like the accessibility now and the barriers to entry have been absolutely demolished, from like even just with Lovable, for example. Like it's just an incredible time to kind of see all these businesses grow. But I suppose my point is, when we have AI and we have access to literally every single bit of information in the entire world, we can pick up our phone. I do this frequently, talk to ChatGPT or Gemini or whoever, and literally just say, I want to know about this or I want to know about that, right? It's a very different way of discovering new information. But what I think has changed dramatically is what we trust. So we still put a bias on human voices, human opinion. And in fact, I would say in the last year, funnily enough, the more unhinged and the more like random and kind of irreverent and unperfect, imperfect, whatever, the more I like it. Like the more I want it, because if I see something that's overly polished or overly perfect, I immediately question it now, and I immediately question, do like it's like a trust thing. Immediately the trust question comes up where I'm like, can I trust this, or was this just generated like from a computer? Whereas if I see it come from a person, if I see someone talking about, even if they're talking about their company, they're talking about the product that they're selling or whatever it is, I will trust that company and that product way more because the person is talking about it. And we just have a bias to trusting humans, I guess, in the whole hierarchy of trust, which is
No,
why I think personal brand
absolutely.
is so
No, it's so
important,
true.
right? And why we've talked about that, I suppose. People are just realizing how important that is.
It's interesting, I know I'm, like, really plugging our Empower Her events, obviously, but we had one, actually at the Google office in Montreal back in May before our event in June, our Let's Get Visible event, and it was on, leadership and AI, and what I really to layer on to your point about AI, what I really found interesting because we had the panel of amazing leaders across the CMOs and agency leaders and what have you, and thought leaders from Google. And what I loved is we got into our working groups afterwards and talked about AI. And I guess there's like kind of underlying fear of like, is it going to replace jobs? But just to see if you can reframe it as a positive, that it's just going to change. Like some leaders were saying, it changes how you hire people because you're looking more for those um, EQ skills and more human skills, right? As you say, because the more like process driven tasks can be handled by AI, when they're hiring for roles now, it's for people that can really connect and can add a human layer of knowledge and skill to a role. And what I also love is as a leader, just how it can allow you to really harness actually more of your inner being because all those things that would maybe take up your brain that would had to be done are all automated for you. So it actually frees up a whole part of your brain that you didn't have accessible before. So it's a learning muscle, but it just was an interesting reframe because I think we're a lot of the conversations had been around, oh, the fear of like how it's going to change the workplace. And listen, I'm not saying that jobs aren't going to go away. I'm not going to be ignorant here. I'm aware of all of that. So I'm not at all taking away from that. But it was just refreshing to hear it reframed that way, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, like, there's an element of that that we can really embrace." And especially as entrepreneurs, like you said, I mean, you taught me so much about all the really cool tools out there, with AI and how you use it as an entrepreneur, and it does. I mean, for us, being on our own and figuring things
Yes.
out, having those tools, it's like
Oh,
our own
it's
personal
fantastic.
assistant, right?
It really is. And
Yeah.
what were you saying there that just kind of sparked something with me? Oh, yeah, it was around how when everything is automated, that can be automated, right? So, like, let's say you and I've been in sales for a long time. So, even just like sending proposals, if you were doing cold outreach, for example, I know there's tons and tons and tons of companies showing up just trying to replace, the sales development rep kind of role and all that cold outbound. But the interesting thing is that the relational stuff is actually increasingly important. But I wonder, like, I wonder what learning will be like. I really think about that as a coach, because as we know and as we've experienced in our careers, some people have natural charisma, right? Where they are unafraid to just put themselves into any room, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I believe the naturally charismatic are the best salespeople. In fact, I don't believe that. But it is interesting that I wonder, as we place more emphasis on the relational side of things because AI will remove the rest, does that also remove the opportunities for the less confident among us or the more introverted side of people? Will they get the same chance to practice and to overcome, those relational skills that they need to develop in order to stand out from AI, basically, It's an interesting one, and I even think about it from like I'm truly obsessed. Like I have always been very techy and I just love all the different new tools that are coming out. I use pretty much all of the different AI. Like I love Claude, I love ChatGPT, Gemini. Um, but one thing I have noticed is if I use it to generate ideas for me, I feel like it stops me from being generous. Generative. Now I know that that's probably an obvious thing, but I do think that there's a danger that if we use them to replace creative thinking, for example, that muscle then atrophies. And so I have found myself in my own usage being really, really mindful and intentional about how I'm using AI. So instead of using it to just like create something for me, I'm like going back and forth to having like these massive prompts going, like having conversations, refining and try and doing brainstorms and asking it to challenge me and asking it to like give me devil's advocate views and like what would somebody that doesn't agree with this think and all those kinds of things because I think that's more helpful than me saying make this for me, you know?
That's really yeah, that's it does make sense. It does make sense. Because Evo said from day one, it's what you put in is what you get out too, right? If you just put in like, write a post that talks about bleh, it's like, sure, I will do that. But I mean, it's not really, you're not really engaged in that process. Whereas when you're talking about going back and forth, the refining, you're still
Yeah.
using that muscle,
Yeah, and
right?
the power is the tool usage, not the tool. And then it's like it's not AI is gonna replace you. It's the people using AI really well are gonna replace you. That's what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's what Scott Galloway says all the time on his podcast, right? It's exactly that. AI is not. It's the people that know how to use it effectively
And
that
I wonder
will
what's gonna happen with
replace,
learning.
for
What's
sure.
gonna and I see it with it's funny, I don't know if you saw there was like an interview done with Sam Altman a few weeks back, I wanna say, and he was talking about how people use ChatGPT for coaching and for like psychological support, which on one hand is wonderful, right? Like let's say people that would have never maybe they just, don't have the financial ability to engage with a therapist or with a coach or whatever it is, and they now have a way to get psychological support that they wouldn't have had before. That's all really, really good. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that develop because we are going to be like everyone is going to just have their own little AI that's been customized for them, right? Like based on all the knowledge that they're going to have about us, our background, our resumes, our likes, our values, our strengths, all of it. They're going to know everything. They're gonna know all of our, like, memories and, you know, fears and goals and dreams and all of those things and be super customized to us. But ultimately, there's also the danger of it becoming, I don't know, like a little bit of an echo chamber as well. There is that kind of like, remember when ChatGPT was very like overly sycophantic and people were like, oh my God, ChatGPT, stop telling me how fabulous I am. Like literally, I need a critical evaluation of this. If I'm asking you for something that's whatever it might be, I need you to tell me in a measured way, not just, "Oh my god, what a wonderful idea. Let me tell you more about that." So there is the danger that there's this echo chamber happening when you're sharing things that from a psychological perspective. So I do think it's going to be really important to still have that human element, that relational field where you have a human presence witnessing or bearing witness to your psychological journey, right? Like through life. Mm.
Absolutely. We need
Mhm.
people like you,
Mm.
Eames. Great coaches.
Oh, well, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I mean, I'm just very curious to see like if we were to do season 2 of this podcast in a year's time, What are we going to be talking about? What is going to be changed at that point? You know, I think we've said like we're going to take a little break between season 1 and season 2 and explore like what we want to do in season 2. I mean, one of the things that I've really enjoyed is the people that we've interviewed and the way that I feel they have all really shared like authentically what they feel about the topics that we've talked about. You know, it just felt very real. Um, which I've loved, and of course spending time with you.
Absolutely.
I'm obsessed.
I know. No, it's so true. I mean, I think as we look at the season 2, it's like curating those guests that we bring on because we're learning as much as everyone else when they come on, right? So, to your point, I mean, what a season. Like I think when you and I started, I think our first episode we wrote it. It was in London and back in March of this year, and we didn't really know where it was going to go, right? That's
We
the
didn't
neat
know
part of this
anything
journey,
about podcasts.
you know.
You
We
remember
didn't
we were, like, sitting in that
know anything.
room and we were like, "Ugh," and, like, you have this, like, perfectionism when it comes to speaking because you're like, "Oh, fuck it, even now," right? But then the cool thing about podcasts and, like, you have done a bunch of episodes, like, guesting on other people's podcasts, as have I, and the really cool thing it's funny, I was doing a podcast guest spot or whatever recently, and the guy that was hosting, what really great guy, he was like explaining it to me. He's like, now, if you say something that you're unsure of or that you make some sort of flub or whatever, just take a pause. I can edit that out and we can start again. And I was like, oh, I know all about this because you know the way we've learned, you and I, that like if we make a mistake, we just go silent for like 30 seconds and then it can be cut out.
Matt,
Yeah. And what
help.
exactly, I mean, is
Take
that gonna
this
happen to
out.
us in, like, real life when we're talking to people? We just go blank and, like, start disassociating? It's like, "Let me start that again." Yeah. But
Redo.
we didn't know
Redo.
anything about that. We didn't know anything about editing
No.
or thumbnails or YouTube or, you know, all of those things. There's just so much out there. I have so much respect for people who create content, by the way. I think it's one of the hardest jobs ever to do. Like social media managers,
Absolutely.
people that manage brands, like, oh my god, it is such a difficult.
Remember that amazing, when we did our sessions at
Yes.
Chorus, Roz? How amazing she was, and she came to our
Yes,
event in
like,
London.
that has been so cool
Oh,
that
full
we
circle. Like, what a human being.
we
We've met some
really
great people
have,
along the
and
way,
with all, like,
really.
kinda different perspectives and things, like, we
Yeah.
talked to Darcy, who gave us, like, that really interesting lens into her career in the corporate world, and then we had Rachel, who just recently you know, that she made her move from, a very, very successful leadership career, you know, into coaching full time, and so it's just been really cool to explore what success means for all of them, what identity means, and to see how they've been reinventing themselves but not in a prescribed way, which just again, like as I think about reflecting back on this year and this podcast season, the word that comes to mind for me, if I was to encapsulate it in one word, is liberation. It's that sense of I thought I had to be one way, but I've actually realized that I can be any way, you know? Just liberation, I think, has been a word. What about you? Do you have a word for the season?
Okay, what is will be a word? I guess for me, discovery, because I think for me, I mean, I look back at the last year like what a gift I gave myself. Because since I was basically fresh out of university, I've been working my entire career. I've never taken a break. Like I've always had a career. I mean, I changed careers and like pivoted from law to media, but I never took a break, you know. And so this year truly has been a gift, and I gave the gift to myself, and I really got a chance to discover myself. And so that I think for me is my word, discovery, discovery, and it's still evolving, still discovering every day. Never like you said, we can strive for perfection, but we'll never really get there, right? Like, more it's more the journey than the actual
Mm.
destination,
And the
right?
reminder I think that I'm going to take from this is just to try and stay open, you know, open and curious. I think that is what has allowed me to navigate the changes of this year and give myself the permission or you know, feel the liberation of being terrible at things, right? Being new at things, trying things for the first time, you know, things that maybe don't work and then pivoting to something else. I mean, these are skills that I think just translate into any, like, no matter what you're doing, these are good things. They're good things for the soul. And they're also like, there's nothing wrong with being humbled every now and again. Everyone needs a good humbling every now and again, you know? And so I think
Exactly.
that's a huge part of
I
learning.
agree.
And I think it's a really important part is to stay open and not get too, well, this is what I'm going to try and do anyway, as a reminder to myself, is not get too rigid and caught up with who I think I should be, and just trying who I feel I want to be. Does that make sense?
Mm. It does make sense. So, Ames, as we wrap up season one of Reinventing the Algorithm, you know I love my threes. So, I wanted to ask you, what are three things that you are grateful for this past year and past season?
Mm. So, three things. I think the first one would be I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn more about myself, about my capabilities, about who I am without a corporate role defining me, and who I can be. So, the learning, I think, has been really transformative. And, like I mentioned, the difficulties in learning. It hasn't been just sailing, it's been graft, but that's been a good thing. I think the second thing is the reminder to myself to stay open and to stay, psychologically flexible wherever I can, and to bring in this sense of curiosity, and, that I can change, that things will change, that change is completely inevitable. And it can also be fun, and it can be, you know, exciting and safe. Right? So I think that that's another thing, is just, you know, embracing this sense of openness and flexibility to whatever comes, because I'm not sure if I would have been as open without this year of ultimate openness, and just like learning and discovering, to steal your word. And then I think the third thing is you. I'm so
Oh,
grateful for you, and for just, spending time with you this past year. We've known each other for a very, very long time, and, getting to see you in new environments, and you also on this journey of discovery about yourself. It's been just such a joy, and I've just enjoyed it, and I don't want to get choked up, but it's been so lovely.
oh. Well, oh my goodness. Well, okay. Well, I was gonna save that one for my third, but I'll just go right in. So I'm also when my number one for grateful. I'm so grateful for you as well. Like I think like we were it's just so interesting how like I've known you for so many years, like 10 plus, well, 12 years, I guess. Crazy. Through our other, our other lives. But I mean, just it's so I think it's so serendipitous that we went through this together. Like we both made this choice and we are able to be there for each other through this year. And like that kinda leads into, part of my second one, which is growth. So I got to grow with you and then grow myself as well. So again, having this time to breathe and to really, you know, be open and be okay with being uncomfortable and be there with you. And when I had those moments, I knew I could come to you and be
Wobbles.
those wobbles. I'm like, Ames, oh my
Oh, I
gosh.
was totally wobbling with you
There was these
constantly.
honestly, I think those major pivotal ones, I would have one of our connects and you would just you would reframe it for me and I'd be like, "Okay, I got this. I got this. I can do this." So, my one number 1 is grateful for you as well. Number 2 is the ability to have this time for growth. And then the third one for me is reflection. So, you know, um, again, as I'm entering this new chapter for myself right now, and you're, working on your chapter as well with your amazing endeavors, just being able to have the time to reflect on all the things that, we've done and will do, of course, too, but, that we've done over the past year through our events, through our podcast, through our parallel journeys of entrepreneurship. So,
Love that. Oh,
yes.
reflection is such a good one because, you know, like, we have worked together for a decade, and we have worked in very fast-paced environments where things were changing. I mean, who knew? We were selling social media advertising before anyone knew what the fuck it was. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
no,
there's been
it's
so
true.
much change in our
Isn't
career,
it
and,
wild to
like,
think that when we were starting at Twitter, Instagram hadn't even been monetizable yet? Like, it wasn't even a
yes,
product. I
I
remember
don't
because
think
we were
that
like,
Instagram
"Oh,
had been bought.
shit." We were
I
like,
think, yeah, was Instagram bought by Facebook? I don't even think Instagram was actually a thing
"Oh, isn't
when
that
I started working
wild?"
at Twitter, which is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It is, and, like, so just the change that we go through, and I think it's so easy, to your point on reflection, to get the head down, to get everything done, right? Like to just keep plowing forward, keep achieving what you need to achieve, getting the goals, and never, stopping and looking around and being like, oh my God, who am I now? What has just happened? Like, I've just spent 10 years surrounded by like incredible people. I mean, the friends that we've made and just the memories that we have and all of the incredible growth that we had in that time. But like, just to give ourselves that space to be able to say, here's what happened. Here's how I saw myself. And here's how I see myself now. And here's who I want to be now. I mean, it's a real privilege to be able to do that. So I love ending on that note of
Yeah.
reflection.
Yes. Oh.
So I guess, stay tuned for season 2. We're not sure when that's going to be, but we are exploring, staying open, staying curious, and, really thinking and being intentional about what we're going to bring to season 2. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. It's
Thank
been
you.
wonderful spending time with the glorious Sydney.
And
And
viewings.
that's a wrap.
We did
That's it.
it!